Mira had spent most of her life believing that freedom was something other people enjoyed. She grew up in a crowded home where every choice she made was judged, corrected, or completely denied. She was not a rebellious girl. She simply wanted to breathe without fear, study without being questioned, and walk outside without someone accusing her of dreaming too big. All she wanted was a small space in the world where she could live like a normal human being. But in her home, even simple wishes sounded like dangerous plans. The first time she met Rayan, she thought he was a good man. He spoke softly, as if every sentence was a gentle touch. He listened to her problems with attention, nodded carefully, and never raised his voice. To a girl who had never felt truly heard, this alone felt like a gift. He was a traveling salesman who visited her neighborhood once every few months, and each time he passed by, he greeted her with kindness. Slowly, Mira began to trust him, not because she wanted to fall for anyone, but because she desperately needed someone who would not treat her like a burden. One afternoon, after a difficult argument at home, Mira sat outside on the old wooden bench near the street. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her hands trembled with anxiety. Rayan happened to walk by and noticed her tears. He sat down a short distance away, giving her space but not ignoring her pain. He asked if everything was all right. Mira usually kept her problems inside, but that day something broke inside her and the words flowed out. She told him about her strict family, about how she was never allowed to study the subjects she liked, and how she felt trapped in a life that didn't belong to her. Rayan listened quietly. Then he said a sentence that stayed in her heart like a warm spark of hope. "You deserve freedom, Mira. No one has the right to lock your dreams." No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever told her she deserved anything. That night she thought about his words again and again. For the first time in years, she imagined a future where she could choose her own path. She wasn't dreaming of anything wild, just a small job, a chance to study, a place where she could wake up without fear. The next time Rayan visited her street, she felt a strange sense of safety around him, as if he held a key to something she had lost long ago. After several weeks, he told her he was traveling to a nearby city where there were job openings for young women. He said she could come along if she truly wanted to start a new life. Mira hesitated. Running away was not her nature, and she was not trying to escape in secret. She simply wanted to live with respect. But every day at home felt heavier, and every simple thought was questioned before she could even explain it. Rayan's offer felt like the only piece of brightness in her dark routine. He told her he would help her only if she wanted it. "I am not forcing you, but if you trust me, I can help you start fresh," he said. After days of thinking, Mira made the hardest decision of her life. She packed a small bag with a few clothes and her certificates, leaving a short note for her family saying she needed time to figure out her life. She didn't blame anyone in the note. She didn't say anything emotional. She simply wrote that she needed space and would be safe. When Rayan picked her up early the next morning, she felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She was scared because she was stepping into the unknown, but she was excited because for the first time, she was choosing something for herself. He told her to sit comfortably, and he drove the motorcycle carefully, not rushing, not speaking too much. He seemed gentle, supportive, and reliable. As they moved farther from her home, Mira felt lighter. She looked at the sunrise and told herself that this was the first day of her new life. She whispered a small prayer, hoping she was not making a terrible mistake. Rayan smiled at her and said, "You're free now. You'll see how life can be when no one controls your every move." Those words wrapped around her like a warm blanket. But after an hour of driving, Mira noticed something strange. The route did not look like the one that led to the city he had mentioned. Instead, the road became quieter, with fewer houses and more empty fields. When she asked where they were going, he said the city had two entrances and he was taking the less crowded one. His answer sounded normal, but something about his tone made her heart beat a little faster. They stopped in a small town where he said they would rest before continuing. He took her to a simple guest house, saying it was safer to wait until evening when the traffic reduced. She agreed, trusting his explanation, although a small voice inside her was whispering something she couldn't understand yet. Inside the guest house, he asked for her phone, saying he needed to charge it because the sockets in her room were not working. Mira believed him. She had always been taught to respect others, and trusting someone was natural for her. Hours passed, and he didn't return her phone. When she asked again, he casually said he left it charging in the office. His smooth tone made her feel like she was overthinking. He ordered food for her, told her to rest, and said everything would be fine. She tried to believe him, but something inside her felt unsettled. The next morning, Rayan told her they needed to stay in the town for a day or two because the job manager was traveling. Mira felt disappointed, but she accepted it because she didn't know the world outside her home very well. She didn't understand how easily people could twist kindness into control. As the day passed, she noticed another worrying change. Rayan was no longer speaking like a friend. He was giving instructions instead. He told her not to go outside alone. He told her to wait in her room if he went somewhere. He told her not to ask too many questions because it made her look suspicious. Each sentence chipped away a small piece of her confidence. At night, she heard him speaking on the phone. His voice was low, serious, nothing like the gentle tone he used with her. She couldn't hear every word, but she understood enough to feel fear. He mentioned her name. He mentioned someone coming soon. He mentioned a final decision. Mira's hands turned cold. The next day, she asked for her phone again. This time, he didn't smile. He said, "You don't need it right now." His voice had changed completely. It didn't hold warmth anymore. It held authority. She tried to stay calm, telling herself that maybe she was imagining things. She wanted to trust him because the alternative, being alone in a strange place, was terrifying. But every hour brought a new moment that felt wrong. By the evening, she realized something very important. Freedom was slipping from her hands, not because someone forced her, but because she had trusted the wrong person. She sat on the edge of her bed, her heart heavy. She remembered his early words, the promise that she deserved freedom. She had believed him so deeply. Now, for the first time, she wondered if he had said those words only to gain her trust. As night settled outside, Mira stared at the small window, thinking about home, thinking about the journey she had taken, thinking about the hope she had carried, and wondering if she had stepped into a trap she could not see clearly yet. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She simply felt a quiet fear growing inside her, a warning that something was terribly wrong. She didn't know yet that the real truth, the one that would break her heart, was waiting just around the corner. Mira woke up the next morning with a strange heaviness in her chest. She had slept very little. All night, she kept thinking about the tone in Rayan's voice, the way he avoided giving back her phone, and the sudden change in his behavior. She had left her home with hope in her heart, believing she was walking toward a better life, but each hour in this unfamiliar town made her feel like she was stepping deeper into something she did not understand. When she opened her door, Rayan was already sitting in the hallway as if he had been waiting for her. His expression was calm, almost too calm. He told her to eat breakfast and rest, saying the manager from the city would call soon about the job. Mira nodded politely, even though her stomach felt tight with worry. She asked again, softly, about her phone. She said she wanted to call home and tell her family she was safe. Rayan didn't smile this time. He said, "You don't need to worry about that. I told them you're fine." Mira froze. How? She asked carefully. My phone was with you. Ryan simply waved his hand, avoiding her eyes. I know someone who sent the message for you. Just relax. His answer didn't make sense. She didn't question him further, but inside her heart, a quiet alarm began ringing louder. She felt like she was losing control of her own life in small pieces, one small decision at a time, one unanswered question after another. Throughout the day, he stayed close, watching her movements. When she went to refill her water bottle, he followed. When she went to sit outside for air, he stood in the doorway. It didn't feel like protection. It felt like monitoring. Every time she attempted to think clearly, he interrupted with instructions, reminding her to stay inside or rest or wait. Mira kept telling herself that maybe he was being overprotective. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe she was overthinking. But then, something happened that pushed away her last bit of doubt. Late in the afternoon, she walked into the small guest house lobby to ask the receptionist if she could use a landline or send a message to her family. The receptionist, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, looked confused. He said no one had asked him to charge any phone. No phone belonging to a girl had been given to him, and no one had told him to restrict calls. Mira felt a chill run through her entire body. That meant one thing. Rayan had lied to her from the first day. She stepped back slowly, her breath shaky. When she returned to the hallway, she saw Rayan leaning against the wall, watching her. His expression wasn't friendly anymore. It wasn't angry either. It was unreadable, like someone trying to hide something important. He asked her where she had gone. His voice was calm but sharp, as if he already knew she had spoken to someone. Mira swallowed and forced a tiny smile. Just getting water, she said. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, but didn't look convinced. Later that evening, Mira heard him talking on the phone again. She couldn't hear every word, but enough reached her ears to make her feel faint. She heard her name. She heard him mention tomorrow night. She heard him speak about meeting the men. His tone wasn't friendly or familiar. It sounded like a businessman preparing for a deal that involved her. Mira sat on her bed for a long time, feeling a thick cloud of fear forming around her. She wasn't a girl who imagined dramatic things. She had always been practical and calm, but the pieces were starting to fit together in a way that hurt deeply. Why would he take her phone? Why would he lie about sending messages? Why would he take her to a quiet town instead of the busy city he had promised? Why was he meeting people in secret? And most important, why was he treating her like someone who couldn't choose anything for herself? She tried to think of a way to escape the situation without causing trouble. She didn't want drama. She didn't want shouting. She didn't want to accuse anyone without proof. She just wanted her life back, her freedom, the very thing she had left home to find. The next morning, she tried a different approach. She told Rayan she wanted to go outside for some fresh air. He agreed, but insisted on walking with her. As they walked through the small market, Mira hoped she could ask someone for help, but every time she slowed down or looked around, Rayan stepped closer, making it impossible for her to speak to anyone without him hearing. While walking, she noticed a group of women sitting near a fruit stall. One of them, a woman named Nadia, looked at Mira with a kind expression. She was sorting apples, her hands moving quickly but her eyes watching everything around her. At one point, Mira accidentally made eye contact with her, and something in Nadia's eyes made Mira feel seen, not just looked at, but understood. Before Mira could think of approaching her, Rayan pulled her arm gently and said they needed to return. He didn't look angry, but he looked tense, as if every second they spent outside made him uncomfortable. Back at the guest house, things changed even more. Rayan took her small bag and placed it in his room, saying he would keep her things safe. Mira protested softly, saying she needed her clothes and documents. He said she could ask him whenever she needed anything. His words were soft, but the meaning behind them felt like a lock being placed around her life. She realized that she was losing control faster than she had expected. That evening, she couldn't sit still. Her heart felt too heavy, her thoughts too loud. She knew something was wrong and she needed to find a way out before it got worse. While Rayon stepped outside to take a call, she quickly checked the hallway and saw that the door of his room was slightly open. She stepped inside and searched quietly. Her phone was on the small table beside the bed. When she picked it up, her heart raced. She pressed the button, but the screen stayed black. The phone was switched off. Before she could turn it on, she heard footsteps. She quickly placed it back and rushed out. Her breath was unsteady as she reached her room again. She sat on the bed, holding her hands tightly together so they wouldn't shake. The truth was impossible to ignore now. Rayon wasn't helping her. He was controlling her, and he had taken her away from her home not to give her freedom, but for something else. Something she couldn't fully understand yet. In the middle of the night, she woke up to the sound of chairs being moved in the guest house hall. She heard men talking softly, as if planning something. She couldn't hear every word, but she heard enough to feel her stomach twist painfully. She heard her name again. She heard someone say, "Tomorrow night." She heard the word, "meeting." She didn't know what the meeting was for, but the way they spoke made her feel like she was not being treated as a person with choices. She felt like she was being discussed, arranged, and prepared. Prepared for what? She couldn't answer that question without fear filling her eyes. The next morning, Mira sat near the small window trying to understand what she could do. She had no phone, no money, no independent way to leave the town. She didn't know anyone who could help her. Rayon stayed close to her again, making sure she had no chance to speak to anyone. But fate has a strange way of sending help when it is least expected. Around noon, there was a knock on the door. It was Nadia, the fruit seller. She had come to deliver a basket of fruits to the guest house. Her eyes met Mira's for a brief moment, and Mira felt something inside her open. A small doorway of hope she didn't know she still had. Nadia didn't say anything at that moment, but Mira saw something in her gaze that made her believe she wasn't completely alone. When Nadia left the basket and walked out, Mira watched her from the window. She felt a knot of courage forming slowly in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, someone could help her. But the truth she didn't yet know was this. Rayon had already made a plan, and the meeting that had been arranged was not about Mira's future. It was about the future he had chosen for her. A future she would never accept. A future she would have to fight her way out of. Mira woke up before sunrise, not because she was rested, but because fear had made sleep impossible. She sat on the small bed with her hands folded tightly, her eyes fixed on the thin window where the first light of morning slowly entered. Every minute felt heavy. Every sound in the hallway made her heart jump. She kept thinking of the voices she had heard the night before, voices discussing her as if she didn't have a future of her own. She whispered to herself, "I have to find a way out." But how? She had no phone, no money, and no place to run to. Even the streets outside felt unfamiliar and unsafe. When she stepped into the hallway, Rayon was already there. He greeted her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was the kind of smile that made her feel watched instead of welcomed. He asked her to get ready because they had an important evening. His words made her chest tighten. "What kind of evening?" she asked quietly. He waved his hand casually as if her question didn't matter. "Just some people I want you to meet," he said. "They will help us with your future." His words were soft, but Mira felt a cold truth hiding behind them. She tried to stay calm and nodded politely, but inside her heart, a storm was rising. Later in the day, while she sat in her room pretending to read a magazine, she heard sounds from the hall again. Chairs being moved, tables being arranged, footsteps of men she had never seen. They spoke in low voices, but Mira could tell they were preparing something important, something planned, something involving her. She walked to the door and pressed her ear against it. She heard one man say, "Make sure everything is ready before evening." Another said, "They're coming from out of town. We need to show her properly." Her breath caught. Show her? She stepped back from the door, feeling her hands shake. She didn't want to understand what they meant, but the truth was becoming clearer with every passing minute. Rayan had not brought her here for work. He had not brought her here to help her study. He had brought her here for something she did not agree to and did not understand fully. She sat on the bed, wrapping her arms around herself, wishing she had someone to talk to, someone who would believe her, someone who could help her escape. Then she remembered the woman from the market, Nadia. The way Nadia had looked at her so gently, as if she could see the fear Mira was hiding. The thought of her gave Mira a small piece of courage, like a candle in a dark room. In the afternoon, Rayan stepped out to meet someone. Mira took the moment to breathe freely, even if only for a few minutes. She walked slowly to the window and looked outside. She saw Nadia standing near her fruit stall, arranging oranges neatly. She looked busy, but her eyes kept moving toward the guest house as if she were waiting for something, or someone. Mira felt her heartbeat rise. Maybe if she could reach Nadia, she could tell her what was happening. She knew she had only one chance. She checked the hallway and saw no one. She walked toward the back exit of the guest house, but before she could open the door, she heard footsteps. She quickly moved back into the corridor. Rayan's voice echoed. "Where are you going?" Mira turned, trying to keep her voice steady. "Just wanted some air," she said. He studied her for a long moment. She saw his eyes look at the door she had almost touched. Then he stepped forward and locked it. "This door stays closed today," he said, his voice polite but firm. "It's safer this way." Safer for whom? Mira felt her hope shrink, but she didn't let it disappear completely. The evening approached slowly. Rayan kept moving in and out of the guest house lobby, speaking to different men, checking the arrangements. Mira sat in her room, trying to stay calm while the clock on the wall ticked louder with every passing second. She felt trapped inside both the room and her own thoughts. As the sun began to set, she heard soft knocking on her door. She stiffened, but when she opened it slightly, she saw Nadia standing there, holding a tray of tea. Nadia whispered, "Can I come in?" Mira nodded quickly and stepped aside. Nadia entered the room quietly and placed the tray on the table. For a moment, she pretended the visit was normal, but then she looked at Mira with deep concern. "Are you okay?" Nadia asked softly. Mira's eyes filled instantly. She didn't cry loudly, but her voice broke when she spoke. "I'm not safe," she whispered. "I think he lied to me. I think he brought me here for something I don't understand." Nadia placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I guessed something was wrong," she said quietly. "You look afraid every time he comes near." Mira nodded, her breath shaky. "I don't have my phone. I don't know anyone here. I heard him talking about some meeting tonight. About me." Nadia's expression changed. She wasn't shocked. She looked like someone who had seen such situations before. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "You don't have to stay here. There is a small storage room behind the fruit stall. You can hide there for some time." Mira looked up with hope. "But how will I get there? He doesn't let me go anywhere." Nadia thought for a moment. Then she whispered, "When I bring tea again later, follow me quickly. Don't look back. Don't stop." Mira nodded, her heart racing. She felt a mixture of fear and courage, something she had never felt before in her life. Nadia left quietly, and Mira sat on the bed waiting for the moment that could decide her future. Minutes turned into long, heavy hours. Outside her door, she heard more people arriving. She heard men greeting each other. She heard Rayan giving instructions. Then she heard something that made her heart freeze. She heard Rayan say, "She will be ready soon. Just sit. We will begin when everyone arrives." Begin? Begin what? Mira pressed her hands against her mouth to stop herself from crying out. Finally, a soft knock came on her door again. 3 gentle taps. Nadia's signal. Mira opened the door slowly. Nadia whispered, "Come. Now." Mira stepped out quietly. Her legs felt weak, but her heart pushed her forward. Nadia walked ahead, holding the empty tray as if returning from a normal delivery. Mira followed her closely, trying to look calm. As they passed the lobby, Mira saw several men sitting in chairs talking casually. They didn't look at her, but the sight of them made her skin tighten with fear. She lowered her gaze and kept walking. Just as they reached the back door, a voice called out, "Mira!" It was Rayan. Her heart stopped. She turned slowly. Rayan was standing in the hallway looking at her with a smile that did not look kind. "Where are you going?" Nadia stepped forward and said gently, "I just needed her help to carry some fruit boxes." Rayan looked at Nadia for a moment, then back at Mira. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't argue. "Don't take long," he said. "We need her inside soon." Inside? For what? A sharp fear stabbed Mira's chest, but she kept walking. The moment they reached the back door and stepped outside, Nadia grabbed her wrist gently and whispered, "Run quietly. Don't stop." They hurried across the yard, past the trees, toward the fruit stall. The air tasted like freedom, even though fear chased them like a shadow. Nadia opened the small wooden door behind the stall and pushed Mira inside. "You'll be safe here for now," she whispered. "I'll go to the police. Stay quiet. Don't come out unless I come back." Mira nodded, tears falling silently down her cheeks. For the first time since she had left her home, she felt a real chance to be safe, a real chance to reclaim her life. Inside the small storage room, she sat on a box, hugging her knees. Outside, she could hear the distant noise of men talking, chairs moving, and Rayan calling her name with growing irritation. But she stayed still. She stayed brave. She stayed hidden. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if Nadia would reach the police in time. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity. She would not go back. Not to the guest house. Not to Rayan. Not to the future he had planned for her. This time, she chose herself. Mira sat inside the small storage room, her back against the wooden wall, her knees pulled to her chest. The room was dim, with a thin line of light entering through a crack near the roof. Dust floated slowly in the air, and the quietness made every second feel longer. She tried to breathe steadily, but her heart kept racing. Every tiny sound from outside made her shoulders jump. She kept replaying everything in her head, the moment she left home with hope, the moment she realized Rayan had been lying, the whispers about a meeting, the locked doors, and finally, Nadia's gentle hand guiding her toward safety. Mira had never imagined she would be hiding in a storage room to protect her own future. But right now, this small dark room felt like the safest place in the world. She whispered to herself, "Just hold on. Nadia will come back. I just have to wait." Waiting was hard, but waiting was also survival. Minutes passed slowly. Then those minutes turned into what felt like hours. Mira didn't know what time it was. She didn't know how far the police station was. She didn't know if Nadia had reached safely. She didn't know if Rayan already suspected something. But she knew one thing. She couldn't step outside until Nadia returned. Outside the room, she heard footsteps now and then, some soft, some hurried. At one point, she heard Rayan's voice calling her name loudly. His voice echoed through the yard and made her heart turn cold. He sounded tense, not angry, but worried. Worried about losing control of the situation. She held her breath until his voice faded. The more she waited, the more she understood something important. She used to think freedom was something someone else would give her, that someone would arrive one day and rescue her from her life. But now she realized freedom was something she had to fight for with her own courage. She had been quiet all her life. For the first time, she had made a decision that said, "My life belongs to me." After some time, she heard a rustling sound near the door. Mira stiffened. She pressed herself against the wall and held her breath. Then a soft whisper came from the other side. "Mira, it's me." It was Nadia. Mira rushed to the door. Nadia opened it just enough to slip inside. She looked tired, her hair slightly messy, but her eyes were full of determination. "I went to the police," Nadia whispered, catching her breath. "They're coming. Just stay quiet a little longer." Mira felt tears form in her eyes. Relief washed over her like warm sunlight. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Nadia touched her shoulder gently. "You're brave, Mira. You did the right thing." They sat quietly for a few minutes. Then Nadia stood again and peeked outside. "Stay here. I'll go help them find the right place," she said. "Don't move, no matter what you hear." Mira nodded. She trusted Nadia completely now. When Nadia left again, Mira sat back down. Her heart was still beating fast, but for the first time in days, her fear was balanced with hope. A soft, warm hope that grew bigger with every passing moment. Suddenly, she heard loud voices from the street. Not angry voices, official voices, voices of authority. She recognized the tone that police officers used when they were questioning people. She couldn't hear the words clearly, but she could sense the tension in the air. She heard someone shouting her name again. It was Rayan, sounding more desperate this time. "Mira, where are you? Come out! Don't make a mistake! Come out!" She closed her eyes tightly, trying to block out his voice. She refused to move. She refused to answer. She refused to give in. Then she heard the sound of more footsteps, firmer, faster. She heard Nadia guiding them. She heard doors opening, questions being asked, chairs being moved. The sound felt like a storm passing overhead, shaking everything around her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she heard Nadia's voice near the storage room again. "Mira, it's safe now." Mira opened the door and stepped out slowly. To her surprise, 2 police officers were standing there, one male and one female. Their expressions were calm and understanding. The female officer stepped forward gently. "Are you Mira?" she asked softly. Mira nodded, her eyes filling with emotion. "You're safe now," the officer said. "We're here to help you." Those words were like a warm blanket around Mira's heart. She felt her knees weaken, but she remained standing. The officers led her toward the front of the guest house. Outside, she saw several people gathered, watching with confused faces. The police were speaking with Rayan and the men he had invited. Rayan looked shocked and uncomfortable. His confident smile was gone. He avoided Mira's eyes completely. Mira did not feel anger toward him. She felt nothing except a calm strength inside her, a strength she thought she had lost long ago. The officers asked Mira to sit on a bench outside while they spoke to the others. Nadia stayed by her side. "You did so well," Nadia whispered. "Everything will be okay now." For the first time since she had left her home, Mira believed those words. After giving her statement, Mira told the police everything: how Rayan had taken her phone, how he kept her in the guest house, how she heard him speaking about a meeting involving her. She didn't add anything dramatic. She simply told the truth in simple words. The officers listened with seriousness and respect. They didn't rush her or interrupt her. They asked gentle questions and noted down every detail. After the questioning, the female officer sat beside Mira and said, You're safe now. We will help you go wherever you want. You don't have to return with anyone you don't trust. Mira looked at her with grateful eyes. I just want to start my life again, she said quietly. And you will, the officer promised. Nadia offered to let Mira stay at her home for a few days until everything settled. The police agreed it was a safe option since Nadia lived nearby and had already shown she cared about Mira's well-being. That evening, Mira sat on Nadia's small balcony, watching the sun set behind the trees. The sky was soft orange, and the air smelled like hope. Nadia brought her warm tea and sat beside her. You're stronger than you think, Nadia said, smiling gently. Mira looked at the horizon. I didn't feel strong, she said. I felt scared through everything. That's what makes you strong, Nadia replied. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing the right thing even when your heart is shaking. Those words stayed in Mira's heart. Over the next few days, the police continued their work. They learned that Rayan had been involved in troubling activities for a long time, and Mira's escape helped them uncover more. They also found 2 other young women who were in similar situations, and they helped them too. Mira was amazed. I didn't save only myself, she whispered one day. Others were helped because I spoke the truth. Nadia smiled and placed a hand over hers. Sometimes one brave voice changes many lives. Days later, Mira decided to move to a nearby women's support home where she could study, work, and rebuild her future. The officers helped her with the paperwork, and Nadia helped her pack. The day Mira moved, she hugged Nadia tightly. You saved my life, Mira whispered. Nadia shook her head. No, Mira, you saved your own life. I just showed you one open door. You were the one who stepped through it. Mira smiled, and for the first time in a long time, her smile felt honest and light. As she walked into her new home, Mira felt a deep peace inside her. She was not the same girl who had left her house searching for freedom. She was now a young woman who had learned what freedom really meant, not a promise from someone else, not a favor, not a gift. Freedom was her right. Freedom was her courage. Freedom was her choice, and she had chosen it. Whenever someone new at the support home asked her story, Mira simply said, I trusted someone who didn't value me. But I learned something important. Your heart is not something anyone else can own. Not everyone who promises freedom gives it. Sometimes you have to stand up and claim it yourself. Her words inspired many other girls who came searching for hope. Mira looked at the sky one evening, feeling grateful for the journey that brought her here, even with all its pain. Because in the end, she had found something she had been looking for her whole life, a future she could call her own.